Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel News XUSA. Please subscribe and like my videos. Today, we're turning our attention to a development that may mark a new chapter in the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia. For years, the conflict has played out largely within Ukrainian territory or along the border. Now, however, we are seeing operations that bring the war deeper into Russian territory, into the region of Moscow itself. We will walk through what has happened, how it was executed, the implications for both sides, and what it could mean for the future of the conflict. Let's start with the exterior. Picture the broad view of what exactly is happening. Over the recent period, Ukrainian forces have launched drone and missile strikes that have penetrated into the Moscow region, reaching infrastructure and causing disruption to Russian energy and military logistics. Specifically, Ukraine's intelligence service reported that a major fuel pipeline system near Moscow, the Koltsovoy pipeline, was hit. This pipeline reportedly runs some 400 km and carries millions of tons of fuel annually to Russian forces, including gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. These kinds of strikes are signaling a shift from defense and conventional battlefield operations inside Ukraine to a strategy of targeting the depth of Russia's logistic and energy infrastructure. The exterior stage thus frames the war's geography expanding, the front lines shifting, and Russia's home territory no longer immune from direct strike operations, moving now into the interior, the inside. Detail, the full immersive view of what this means, how it was carried out, and the human dimension behind it. Inside Ukraine's strategy, this is not just about military hardware. It is about forcing a strategic choice. Ukraine's own intelligence statements say that by bringing the war home to Russia's doorstep, they hope to create pressure within Russian society and leadership to degrade logistics, fuel supply lines, and energy infrastructure, and thereby reduce Russia's ability to sustain the war. On the Russian side, this strikes at the presumed invulnerability of the capital and surrounding regions. Having operations inside the Moscow region challenges both morale and the notion of safe rear area zones. One author writes, "For the first time, Russia's capital felt the front lines." Inside the war economy, pipelines such as the Koltsovoy are essential, carrying up to 3 million tons of jet fuel, 2.8 million tons of diesel, and 1.6 million tons of petrol annually, according to Ukraine's intelligence. Disrupting supply on that scale has ripple effects: aircraft readiness, ground vehicle mobility, heating in winter, transport logistics, all of which affect warfighting capability. Inside the anti-air defense picture, the fact that drones and missiles are reaching near Moscow shows that even the dense air defense layers of the Russian capital region have limitations. As one article put it, Ukrainian drones pierced the dense defensive ring around Moscow. On the human side, we must not lose sight of the fact that ordinary people living in areas considered safe are now facing alarm, disruption, fear. Civilians may face blackouts, fuel disruption, or simply the knowledge that conflict zones have expanded. On the Ukrainian side, the war is cascading into ever more complex operational domains, with longer ranges, deeper strikes, and higher stakes. This interior view thus brings together strategy, logistics, civilian impact, defense systems, and the evolving nature of what is being targeted. Now let's talk about performance. How effective have these operations been? What are the outcomes so far? From open sources, it appears Ukraine has succeeded in delivering strikes into the Moscow region that are meaningful. The Koltsovoy pipeline disruption is cited as a serious blow to Russian military logistics. Furthermore, analysis indicates that Russian air defense systems are being challenged by such attacks. Not all drones and missiles are being intercepted as effectively as before, and the psychological impact of strikes near Moscow could be significant. At the same time, the performance question involves cost. Ukraine is stretching its capabilities, risking escalation, and operating farther afield. Whether these operations can be sustained and scaled remains a key question. For Russia, performance means how well it can defend its interior, maintain supply chains and morale. The fact that attacks have reached zones formerly considered safe suggests a gap in terms of safety features. Though safety is a loaded term in wartime context, we can interpret this as how each side is attempting to protect itself, safeguard its civilians and critical infrastructure, and maintain resilience. Ukraine is taking steps to protect civilians within Ukraine by emphasizing that strikes target infrastructure and logistic networks rather than civilian populations. For example, the strike on the pipeline claimed to avoid civilian casualties and aim at military logistics. Russia, for its part, has long relied on layered air defense systems, early warning alarms, civil shelters, redundancy in energy networks, and fortress-like protection around the capital. But the penetration of drone signals potential safety vulnerabilities. The concept of safe zones is loosened. In addition, Russia's resilience strategy includes restoring services after strikes, relocating infrastructure, and bolstering rear-area defense. In that sense, the safety features of the home front are now being tested like never before. Unique selling points, although this is war rather than a product, we can frame it as what is distinctive about this development and why it matters. First, the operation marks a symbolic turning point. The war is now reaching Russia's interior, the capital region. That alone changes perceptions and could shift political and strategic calculus. Second, it highlights Ukraine's growing reach, operational sophistication, and audacity to engage in deep strikes. Third, it exposes vulnerabilities in what was assumed to be a protected rear area for Russia, the Moscow region, which may open new fronts or force redistribution of Russian resources from offensive to defensive roles. Fourth, it alters the narrative. One of defense and attrition becomes one where Ukraine is proactive, attacking enemy logistics, supply lines, and striking symbolic targets. Fifth, it raises the stakes for escalation, making the war's footprint wider and the risk of spillover or broader confrontation greater. These unique aspects make this moment especially significant in the overall conflict. Price again in a war context, the price is the cost and consequences. For Ukraine, the cost involves resources, drones, missiles, intelligence, logistics, risk of casualties, and risk of escalation with Russia, which might respond more aggressively. There's also the political cost. Launching attacks deeper into Russian territory may strain diplomatic support, raise risks of retaliation on Ukrainian soil, or escalate the conflict regionally. For Russia, the price is loss of perceived security, burden of defending more territory, shifting resources to protect domestic infrastructure, potential impact on morale and political stability, disruption of energy and logistics, potential economic damage, and civilian unrest. There are also indirect costs. If the war spreads, sanctions tighten, global energy markets shift, internal dissent increases. In human terms, the price is also measured in lives, displacement, destruction, trauma. So the price of this phase is high for both sides, though Ukraine judges the potential strategic gain worth it. In conclusion, what does this all mean for the war going forward? The fact that Ukrainian forces have struck into the Moscow region means the conflict is expanding in geography, complexity, and risk. The defensive boundaries of Russia are under pressure, Ukraine's offensive reach is growing, and the strategic dynamic is shifting. We could see change in Russian priorities, defending home territory rather than just advancing. We could see increased diplomatic urgency, and we could see the war's center of gravity move. But with that comes risk. Escalation is more probable. Civilian populations further from the front lines may become targets or be drawn into the conflict, and the broader region may feel the effects. For global watchers, this development underscores that the war is not static. Rear areas are no longer safe, strategy is evolving, and the stakes are rising. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please remember to subscribe and like, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss future analyses. Thanks for watching News X USA, and stay informed, stay safe,